right biologist taunt us!
What are you gonna do? Shoot us?
Hi everybody, I'm Luke Hector and this is the Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to ranting and raving about board games, but let's be honest, it's more the ranting part. This is going back to a game that has been a little bit infamous with me actually, Forest Shuffle. Now, I have done a full review of this game and you know, spoiler alert, I didn't give it a seal of endorsement, but I said that I did like a lot of stuff about it, so why didn't it get a seal? Well, the biggest problems I had with this, firstly, the scoring takes forever in this game, absolutely forever, and this is compared to stuff like Earth, which already takes a long time to score, but not as, you know, I feel this one's more fiddly, but, you know, you can get an app that helps you with it, but, you know, more on that a bit later. But this one, the main problem with this was that I didn't really want to play it with more than 3 players. I thought 4 and 5 just wasn't really worth it because there's not a lot of interaction in the game. But the biggest issue was the balance. The balance with this game was just completely off the chart because you've got lots of different ways for these cards to score. But it was evident that there was basically 2 strategies in the game that dominated all. You either got a load of trees or you got deers and wolves. That was it. If you took one of those strategies and you made it your own, then you won. Like nothing else in this. No, the butterflies, the bats, you know, the squirrels or whatever, the hares, you know, the foxes and that. None of those were ever going to score you as many points as trees and deer/wolves. It was pretty much the give and go. So it put me off wanting to really play this game much anymore, even though BGA does have a good implementation of it. But now since then they've had 2 new expansions. We have got Alpine and we got Woodland. And I always said, well, you know what, I'd like to give the game a go with these included. Took a while to get that facilitated, and at HandyCon recently I got the Alpine one played on its own with Forest Shuffle. I then decided, you know what, out of my own pocket, I'm going to buy a copy of Forest Shuffle again. I'm going to get both expansions, so Alpine and Woodland Edge. I'm going to shove both of them in here, play it some more, and see whether these 2 expansions fix the game for me. So that's essentially what this video is going to be. I'm going to tell you what is in each. I'm going to kind of give an overview of what the new cards kind of do in terms of, like, you know, how they address this balance issue, and then give you my full verdict at the end of the day as to whether you should get one or the other, or both, or none at all.
You have my undivided attention.
So each box is basically £9 to £11. They come in a box. Honestly, it could have just literally come in a baggie. It would have been easy enough. And it just comes with 36 cards and a rulebook. That's it. You could have had the rulebook on the cards, and then you could have had the cards in the baggie. Would have kept the cost right down. You wouldn't need unnecessary, like, you know, proper packaging, because unsleeved or sleeved, you can get everything into the base box anyway, so it's not that big a deal. But let's start with Alpine. So Alpine's main shtick is that it just basically bolsters the cards, but there's nothing particularly, like, drastically new. It just adds more variety into the decks. Now, this isn't all 36 cards. I've got a lot of cards in there. If I've got to separate out every single one in the expansion, then I'd go nuts. But mainly you get a few extra trees, European larches, some stone pines, you know, I think it's just larches and stone pines. Yep, larches and stone pines, but more trees. I mean, you got to add to the amount of trees in the game to balance things out, and all the cards previously that said you need to have 8 species of trees now basically just say you need 8 species in general. But mainly, all the things in here kind of boost other things that we've already seen before. There's only a couple of new creatures per se. I mean, you have a new bird, you've got a vulture, you've got a new bat, you've got a new, you know, yeah, a couple of new bats. You've got another butterfly, which is certainly most warranted. You've got another type of deer. You've got a couple more herbs, you know. So there's not like any new creature types per se. But what this expansion is essentially doing is trying to augment some of the previous strategies that didn't work too well. So this one doesn't go out of its way to make deers and wolves or trees any better. I mean, the 2 trees here literally just give you either flat points or give you points for having expansion cards. They're not particularly amazing by themselves, you know, you have to get other stuff with them, but it's just nice trees. But the idea is that some of these strategies in the past that just didn't work before are still boosted by here. You've got a mountain hare, which can count as another, you know, another hare, rabbit, basically. You've got more bats. There wasn't really enough bats in the base game to make them useful. You have got a couple of new creatures. You've got an Alpine Marmot, who basically gives you points for the plant cards, the ones you typically put underneath trees as herbs and stuff. You know, that's pretty cool, because they didn't really do a lot. And you got a couple of extra birds and just, you know, a different type of reptile for collecting the reptile costs before. But the biggest change I've noticed here is that they are definitely boosting, I would say the two main strategies that get boosted here is butterflies and the plant cards. Because not only do you have a 6th butterfly, which is a substantial increase in points from the original 20 for 5, now it's 35 for 6, you know, that's a big decent jump. But you have got a lot of other cards, like the gentian plant that gives you points for butterflies. You've got the Alpine Marmot, which gives you points for different plant cards. You've then got the stinging nettles, where you can put as many butterflies on this tree as you like, and it gives you, again, more points for butterflies. So, you know, even the Alpine Newt here gives you points for bugs, and bugs can include butterflies. So there's definitely more ways to make some of those weaker strategies from before a little bit better, and it doesn't really do anything to suddenly make trees or deer or wolves any more powerful. In fact, I don't even think there is a wolf in this entire set. So it's, you know, it's essentially a small box expansion that just gives you a bit of extra variety and helps to boost the original base game scaling problem. Now, I have played the game with just Alpine in it. I have not played the game with just Woodland in it. With Alpine included, it is definitely an improvement on the base game, but not enough to suddenly make me go, all right, I'll jump this from a 6 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10. You know, it's kind of like, it still stays about the same. You know, you still have a little bit of that game balance issue, but it's mitigated a little bit more. You do remove more cards from the deck when you actually start the game, so I'll go for the exact thing. So setup changes, and tell me if something is weird when I read this, right? Shuffle the base game and expansion cards together, yeah. Return 10 cards to the game box unseen. Then, based on the player count, remove additional cards unseen as follows. X, Y, Z, whatever. What?
Right.
Why tell me to remove 10 cards and then remove a different number of cards? Why didn't you just simply go X cards with 2 players, X cards with 3? The original 10 doesn't make any sense. I mean, who read this and didn't think that was a bit weird? Not a blemish on the game, I just thought that's a really bizarre way to write this rule in the rulebook. It's like, so you normally for 2, 3, 4, 5 players remove 45, 30, 15 or none. Again, why don't we just say 55, 40, 25, 10? You know, would that make more sense?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
It basically means that because you're removing cards, some of those strategies that are guaranteed in the normal game won't necessarily pop up. And it just explains the rest of the cards and how they work. But to be honest, none of these abilities are hard to figure out. I mean, they are all self-explanatory and pretty straightforward. So this is a very easy one to throw into the game, even if you're just teaching someone the base game. It really is not difficult. So Alpine expansion, pretty decent. It's 10 quid for a few extra cards, decent enough. So let's move on to the Woodland Edge. So this is the second one to come out. I believe there's even a third one coming out later this year. Caves or Exploration, I think it's called. So I'll certainly be on the lookout for that one. Forest Shuffle Woodland Edge does the same thing. I mean, it gives you 36 cards. It gives you a few extra, different types of, things to score for. Except it now gives you the setup changes for 1 or 2 expansions on top. And it gets pretty insane when you have 2 expansions. I mean, again, return 10 unseen and then return a bunch more. Again, why did they write it like this? But with 2 expansions, it's 80, 50, 35, 20 on top of those 10. That's a lot of cards you got to take out of the deck, and, why not? I think that's pretty cool, because it really does mean that this deck of cards that you play with is going to be substantially varied every time you play it. In terms of the cards you get in here, again, it provides essentially a little bit of extra variety for some of the other cards that we've had, like birds and bats and bugs, and, there's new squeaker piggies, there's, more bugs. But definitely I would say this one favours more the, I don't think there's any deer in here either. I mean, you've got bison, you've got polecats, but I don't think this one actually comes with any deers per se. I mean, it is Woodland Edge, so I'm surprised there aren't any. But what this one does, it also doesn't come with any trees. So it's like, okay, well, what does it come up with instead? I really like this new addition. It's basically called shrubs. They function like a tree for some respects, but not like others. They have slots on each side that you can put cards on. So you can use it as a tree to put more cards out, but it's not a tree for other purposes like scoring trees. So it kind of means that you're not making the tree strategy any stronger. But each one of these has some effect that works with one of the previously said, lacking strategies. So you've got one for plant cards, you've got one for bat cards, and you've got one for butterfly cards that all say the same thing. Whenever you play a card with this icon, draw a card, and if you play it with the bonus, you get to put one out for free. So you can speed out some of those ones that are typically quite cheap, but it's allowing you to get a good amount of card draw for playing these relatively cheap animals that you have to kind of spam on a regular basis. I really like these shrubs, and there's even stuff that scores for shrubs in here, or the polecat particularly, wants you to place it on top of a tree or shrub by itself, for 10 points. So I like these new shrubs. I think they're a cool idea. The picture's really nice because you get like a kind of full portrait of it, a bit like on the tree cards. I'd like to see more of these. The rest of the stuff in here is kind of self-explanatory. I mean, the owl gives you points for bats, which again makes the bat strategy a little bit better. There are some birds that like to go on top of shrubs specifically. There's more cards that reward points for birds, points for particular like symbols, the ones you use to play the bonus cards. Just a few little cards that boost previous strategies, but particularly from a card standpoint, the ones that stand out for me are, again, another butterfly and a digitalis plant. The digitalis plant is similar to butterflies, but it rewards you points for having different plants. And when you get a lot of those plants out, you can score quite nicely, and it makes a plant strategy actually pretty viable in this game. But also, with 7 butterflies, you get all 7 butterflies out, which is not easy, but if you manage it, it's 55 points for the set. So it goes like 3, 6, 12, 20, 35, 55. It's quite a jump if you can get the 6th or 7th butterfly. Annoyingly, because you take out a lot of cards from the game, it is possible that you might just have no chance of getting 6 or 7 butterflies, and you don't know this until you've started getting into butterflies. So there is that slight risk. But again, this goes a nice way to make some of those weaker strategies before a little bit better, introduce a couple of new ones, and do nothing to make trees or deers and wolves any better, because let's face it, they were already pretty powerful. So again, this expansion on its own, I quite like. But there's the thing with this. I actually think that these expansions are best played together, because if you play one on their own, it goes some way to mitigate the problems with the base game, but I don't think they individually go far enough. It improves it. Like, if I really was going to go decimal ratings or something, I'd go 6, then 6.5 if you were to introduce one of these expansions to the game. But when you put them both together and mix everything up and remove a bunch of cards from the deck like the setup changes do, it actually does improve Forest Shuffle for me. The strategies that I have seen win this game have been a lot more varied. It's not just trees and deer/wolves. I've seen butterflies win. I've seen plants do quite well. I think the last game I played, I think I sort of diversified and did kind of a bit of everything, but I do remember scoring quite a bit for the reptiles, like the little reptiles you can get, and bugs in general. So I was doing quite well with different strategies that I'm used to, but again, I was seeing other people attempt different things, and it worked well. Now, that's not to say that deers and wolves and trees can't dominate if someone does do particularly well with them, and certainly I think they're still going to be on the upper, like, if we're doing a tier ranking system for all the strategies in Forest Shuffle, pretty sure the trees and the deers and wolves are probably still going to be at the top of that list. But the spread is not as wide as it used to be, and this makes these 2 expansions, for me, I think a must-have if you are going to get Forest Shuffle. And because they're simple rules and the iconography doesn't really change, honestly, as I have done, you could just shove both of these into Forest Shuffle and teach the game to somebody who's never seen the game before, with them included. It's really not adding a lot of complexity at all, and that is what a good expansion is. £10 a pop, so £20 for essentially 72 cards. I don't know if I'd necessarily call that the best value when you have to get both together, but I've seen worse. But just to have extra variety and make them so easy to include while still not adding too much complexity makes these, I think, a must-buy. So rating these together is kind of odd. I don't know what I would say. I'd say just because they are essentially more cards. I'd give them an 8 out of 10 each personally and say that these are good, if not great, expansions to have. But I would definitely say you need to get both. Because by having both, it pretty much brings Forest Shuffle from what was previously a 6 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 for me, possibly even encroaching on an 8 out of 10 as great. It goes such a long way, and now that we're going to get a third expansion, putting them all together I think is going to make the strategies even more sort of diluted. And you might think, well, hang on, does it dilute the deck too much? Well, you could argue yes, but as I say, it's going away to balance the problems that the base game had. And if you're one of these diehard fans that thinks the base game was flawless and there was no issues, well then fine. But for me, and a lot of other people, this problem still arises. So definitely think about grabbing these two. These are a good addition to the game. They've certainly improved it for me, and I look forward to seeing what Caves is like in the future. So that's it for me on this episode of the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and consider subscribing to the channel and the Patreon, because your views, engagement and help and support are what keep this channel going. But of course, let me know your thoughts. Do you like one expansion on its own? Do you like both? Do you think the base game is solid enough as it is and you don't want these expansions? I don't think there's many of you out there, but you know, I'd like to hear from you if there is. But let's say, tell me your thoughts on the game in general. And of course, let me know your thoughts on the solo mode with this, because I have not played it solo. It's a print and play solo mode, and I'm kind of thinking I might just wait for the Exploration expansion to come out, where I think the solo mode is going to get put into it properly. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that as well. So until next time, remember, regardless of whether you're going to travel to the mountains or the woods for your game of Forest Shuffle, it's still only a game. So bye for now, take care.